Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today's video touches on something rarely discussed yet deeply significant. The quiet ways in which a man's own words can dissolve the very attraction he hopes to build too often in moments of emotional openness or vulnerability. Men speak from the heart without realizing that certain phrases, though sincere, send a message that quietly undermines their strength. Many of us have been taught to believe that honesty is always endearing, that bearing our fears will bring us closer to someone. But when it comes to attraction, especially romantic attraction, some truths, when poorly framed, can shift the entire emotional dynamic between two people. What a man says in vulnerable moments has the power to either deepen respect and intimacy or quietly extinguish desire. In this video, we're exploring 5 common phrases that many men say with the best intentions, but that unintentionally convey emotional dependence, insecurity, and a loss of inner grounding. Each of these statements might seem harmless on the surface, but they touch something deeper in a woman's emotional compass, something that speaks not to logic, but to instinct. Attraction, after all, is not a contract negotiated with words. It's a current felt through presence, self-possession, and quiet strength. A man's words should reflect the inner steadiness he carries, not the storms he fears. So stay with us until the end as we unpack these 5 statements, not to shame or judge, but to better understand how men can protect the polarity that fuels desire and maintain the strength that invites genuine connection. Number 1, I'm nothing without you. When a man confesses, I'm nothing without you. What may seem like a tender declaration of love often conceals a deeper psychological imbalance, one that few women interpret as romantic instead of melting hearts. Such a phrase quietly signals something unsettling: the loss of personal agency, the collapse of selfhood into the shadow of another. Beneath the emotional tone lies a confession of dependence, and with it, a shift in the very structure of desire. Women are finally attuned to the subtleties of masculine presence, not through bravado or domination, but through the grounded, centered posture of a man who stands firm in his world. In that framework, emotional dependence reads not as love but as fragility. When a woman senses that she has become the man's only source of meaning, something vital within the relationship begins to fracture. Respect turns thin. Attraction, once alive in the tension between two sovereign souls, begins to wither under the weight of neediness. Desire cannot grow in the soil of desperation where there is pity. Passion retreats. She may still care, may still show concern, but not with the same fire that once danced between glances, because in the dynamic where one partner surrenders all inner ground, the other instinctively pulls back, not to wound, but to protect the balance of her psychological terrain. No woman dreams of becoming the air in another's lungs. She wants to breathe beside someone who already knows how to live. Masculinity, in its mature form, does not seek to dissolve into another. It invites connection, but does not collapse in its absence. The man who walks through life with purpose, with friendships, with values anchored beyond the relationship, is not indifferent. He is full. That fullness is what draws a woman into his orbit. She doesn't want to become his world. She wants to be welcomed into one that already exists, vibrant and real. The Stoic understanding affirms this principle. True strength lies in the refusal to outsource identity. To value a woman deeply and genuinely is one thing. To place the entirety of one's emotional worth in her hands is another. One invites love. The other quietly suffocates it. A woman might not say it aloud, but she reads between the lines. She knows when admiration becomes dependence, and once she senses that the man before her has nothing left. If she walks away, her heart shifts, not because she is cruel, but because her instincts push her away from what feels uncertain. The stability she seeks is not built from emotional entanglement, but from the inner gravity of a man who stands whole. Whether she stays or goes, a truly attractive man is not the one who says, "I'm nothing without you," but the one who can look into her eyes and mean, "You matter to me deeply, but I remain whole either way." That balance of love and detachment, of connection and selfhood, is where lasting respect and real desire are born. Number 2, I'm scared you'll leave me. When a man confesses his fear of abandonment, the words may appear as a bid for closeness, an attempt to be emotionally transparent. Yet beneath their softness lies a tremor that unsettles more than it connects. The statement, "I'm scared you'll leave me," is not merely an expression of vulnerability, it is an unintended request for emotional management. A woman hearing this does not only register his words, she feels a sudden shift in her emotional weight, the quiet but pressing invitation to become the stronger one. At first there might be a flicker of compassion, her nurturing instincts awaken momentarily drawn to comfort. But with time, this dynamic breeds imbalance, where once she saw strength and calm, she now encounters need and dependency. The man's quiet fear begins to rewrite the emotional script of the relationship. She is no longer met by a presence that anchors. Instead, she finds herself navigating his inner tempest, even when her own are already swelling. Women are acutely attuned to emotional energy, especially when it shifts from steadiness to instability. The fear of loss, when spoken too early or too often, signals that a man is preparing for disappointment. Instead of living in confidence rather than securing closeness, it generates distance. The role she once played as a partner transforms subtly into that of a protector of his emotions, of his fragility, and that transformation often proves fatal to attraction. What draws women in deeply is not the absence of emotion, but the presence of emotional self-governance, composure in the face of uncertainty, the ability to remain grounded even when the outcome is unknown. These are the traits that communicate quiet strength. Not because a man is indifferent, but because he is not ruled by the fear of loss. His emotional world is not tethered to her. Every move he remains open yet unburdening, present but not pleading. Attraction flourishes when a woman can rest. Emotionally, knowing the man beside her is not seeking rescue but offering refuge. And when fear speaks louder than composure, when the need for reassurance becomes a recurring melody, the woman hears not love but instability over time. Her affection is not diminished because he opened up, but because he handed her a weight that was never hers to carry. Emotional honesty has its place, but the strength behind the honesty defines its impact. When fear governs the message, even tender truths lose their grounding. A man who stands firm in uncertainty, who understands that connection cannot be forced or begged for, becomes the very presence a woman longs to lean into, not out of duty, but out of desire. Number 3, you're out of my league. The moment a man says, "You're out of my league," something shifts, not in her, but in him. He believes he's offering a tribute, humbling himself before beauty or status as if it were chivalrous. But what comes through isn't admiration, it's insecurity, it's self-erasure. And for a woman listening, it registers not as charm, but as doubt that one phrase, dressed in politeness, quietly begins to dismantle the balance between them. It doesn't make her feel honored, it makes her feel distant. She's no longer in conversation with a peer, a man grounded in his worth, but with someone who has already decided he doesn't belong. Attraction, which thrives on mutual recognition, begins to fade under the weight of his self-perceived inferiority. She may laugh it off, she might tell him not to say things like that, but his words leave an imprint. They suggest he believes he's lucky just to be in the room with her, and that belief changes the dynamic. Women notice the energy a man carries about himself, not the loud kind that demands attention, but the quiet conviction that doesn't flinch in the presence of beauty or status. When a man assigns himself to a lower league, he removes himself from the game entirely. What often begins as self-deprecating humor becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy if he keeps reminding her he's not enough. She eventually listens, not because she always believed it, but because he taught her to, and once a woman internalizes that message, trust begins to unravel, trust in his self. Leadership, trust in the stability he might offer, trust in the emotional ground between them. The root of this pattern is comparison. Men raised on ideas of winning, a woman are conditioned to rank themselves, to scan for differences in looks, income, status, and decide whether or not they measure up. But this mindset overlooks the deeper truth. Women are not choosing based on a hierarchy. They are responding to presence, emotional steadiness, and the confidence to stand eye to eye without apology. A woman's attraction isn't born from a man's credentials. It's born from how safe and secure she feels in his presence when he belittles himself. She feels the ground beneath her soften her sense of security. With him begins to erode. She no longer sees him as someone who can anchor her through uncertainty, but someone who is still uncertain about himself. Masculine strength doesn't require loud declarations or polished bravado. It requires quiet self-acceptance, the kind of steadiness that doesn't place her above or below, but right beside the man who knows his worth, doesn't place her on a pedestal. Because he's not looking up to her and he's not asking her to look down, he's already standing on solid ground. In this stillness, a different kind of magnetism forms, one that isn't based on performance but authenticity. Women feel it when they're around a man who doesn't ask for approval because his self-respect is already intact. He doesn't flatter in excess. He doesn't try to impress. And most importantly, he doesn't diminish himself to elevate her. She doesn't need a man who sees her as unattainable. She wants one who sees her as a human, complicated, flawed, beautiful, and equal. And he doesn't need to be anything other than present, stable, and clear in himself. The moment he stops trying to win her is the moment he starts to matter to her, because from that place he's no longer seeking permission to be loved. He's offering a connection from a place of wholeness. And that more than any compliment is what she remembers. Number 4, I'll do anything for you. There is a subtle danger in romantic sacrifice when it becomes a pattern of self-abandonment. When a man utters the words, I'll do anything for you, he rarely imagines the quiet recoil it may cause to him. It sounds like deep love, total commitment, maybe even proof that he's different from the rest. But to many women, this gesture doesn't communicate strength. It stirs an undercurrent of imbalance, a signal that this man, though kind and available, may lack the one quality that sustains true attraction over time. Internal authority. A woman does not long for a partner who disappears into her preferences. She does not secretly wish for a man who will forsake his direction just to orbit around hers. What feels like devotion to him often feels like pressure to her, a pressure to lead, to make all the choices, to emotionally carry both roles. And that is not the kind of responsibility she's drawn to. The moment a man becomes willing to dissolve his boundaries for the sake of preserving connection, he also dissolves the very structure that makes a woman feel safe. And led emotional, overgiving is not a testament to love. It's often the echo of insecurity masked as generosity. Women are emotionally perceptive. They can sense when a man's actions come from centered confidence versus unspoken desperation. I'll do anything for you can too easily translate into I have nothing of my own to stand on. Please accept me. In her mind, the man who gives himself up too easily may not be trustworthy with more complex responsibilities. If he cannot hold his ground, how can he help hold the weight of a shared life? This erosion of masculine leadership begins quietly. It's a small apology for having opinions, the automatic agreement with her ideas to avoid conflict, the subtle withdrawals from his own goals to spend more time meeting her emotional needs. At first she may appreciate the attention, the care, the ease, but over time the dynamic shifts. Instead of feeling loved, she starts to feel responsible for him. She is no longer drawn to his energy. She feels burdened by his emotional dependence. The paradox is clear. The more a man sacrifices his boundaries to gain affection, the more likely he is to lose respect. And once respect fades, desire rarely survives. Masculine strength does not mean coldness, nor does it require dominance. It means living by a code, one defined not by a need for approval, but by clarity of values. A man who lives with such clarity does not need to say, I'll do anything for you. His presence speaks for him. He does not chase connection through self-ra. He invites it through integrity. A woman is not searching for perfection. She's searching for solidity, for the man who listens with care but filters what he hears through his truth, the one who supports her but doesn't lean on her to fill emotional gaps. He hasn't resolved the one who knows that self-sacrifice, when given indiscriminately, becomes a form of emotional manipulation masked as love. When a man gives everything without discernment, he is not offering devotion, he is offering control, dressed in passivity. What creates sustainable intimacy is not unfiltered access or endless submission. It is mutual respect built on individual strength. A man who leads from principle does not need to be asked twice. He does not falter at every disagreement. He does not rewrite himself for comfort. Instead, he stands inside his life with presence and invites a woman to join him, not to direct him. She doesn't want to be everything. She wants to meet someone who already is. And if he gives himself away too soon, she will instinctively understand this is not a man who can hold space for her complexity, because he hasn't yet learned how to hold his own love. When healthy, does not require the sacrifice of self. It demands the fullness of both people, and any man who whispers, "I'll do anything for you," must learn to ask himself in doing so, what part of me am I willing to abandon? And is that what love truly asks of me? Number 5, please don't hurt me. In the quiet moments when a man utters the words, "Please don't hurt me," something far more fragile than fear is revealed. It is not simply a request, but an admission of past wounds that never healed, of emotional fractures hidden. Behind controlled expressions, while the statement might seem like an attempt at vulnerability or emotional honesty, it often carries the unintended weight of expectation and emotional burden, especially from a woman's perspective. To her, those 4 words don't land as a heartfelt truth, but as a subtle shift in the emotional dynamic. Suddenly she is no longer engaging with a man who stands grounded in his emotional stability. She is instead asked to carry his fears, to cushion his past, and to avoid triggering a collapse he already fears will happen. The dynamic is no longer one of equal emotional resonance. It becomes maternal, even supervisory. And that shift, though small in language, can be vast. In consequence, emotional fragility. Disguises openness undermines the very attraction it seeks to protect. Women are often more attuned to emotional energy than men assume, what may sound like a gentle plea, for empathy is frequently interpreted as a signal of anticipated failure. A man who expects to be betrayed or abandoned often brings that outcome upon himself. It's not because the woman intends harm, but because his projection of doubt begins to erode the foundation of trust and desire. The emotional climate becomes heavy, laced with pressure. What was meant to bond now begins to push apart. In female psychology, attraction leans into strength, not invincibility, but resilience, the ability to hold space for one's own emotions without outsourcing their regulation is quietly magnetic. A man who can sit with the discomfort of risk without broadcasting his fear communicates something rare. Self-possession. He becomes someone who chooses to trust, not because he is certain of the outcome, but because he is strong enough to survive any result. And in that frame, rejection doesn't define him. Disappointment doesn't dismantle him. He does not ask to be protected from pain. He demonstrates that he has met pain before and has learned to walk through it without collapse. This kind of emotional integrity is not only attractive, it's trustworthy. It invites connection, not through guilt or pity, but through the safety of shared maturity. What many men misunderstand is that women do not fear vulnerability in a partner. They fear becoming the caretaker of unresolved wounds. They fear being cast in the role of healer when they are simply looking for someone to walk beside them, not cling to them. Emotional transparency, when grounded in strength, can be a bridge, but when drenched in insecurity, it becomes a weight no one asked to carry. So the lesson isn't to become hardened or closed. It is to speak truth from a place that says, "I've been through pain, I'm still standing, and I'm not asking you to save me." That stance honors both your own story and hers, because in the end, emotional resilience is not the absence of pain. It's the quiet confidence that pain will not define how love is given or how one's worth is measured. Music? Throughout this video, we've taken a close look at 5 statements that, though often spoken from a place of emotional honesty, quietly dismantle the very foundation of attraction. These aren't just phrases, they're signals of self-doubt, of emotional dependence, of a man stepping away from his inner strength and placing his sense of worth in someone else's hands. And when that happens, the emotional polarity that draws a woman in begins to fade. Attraction is not built through pleading or vulnerability. Without boundaries, it grows from quiet confidence, from emotional steadiness, from the presence of a man who does not need to be completed because he is already whole. A man who can love deeply without losing himself, who welcomes connection but does not rely on it for identity. These are the men and women whom people trust, respect, and desire. Not because they chase validation, but because they stand firm in their sense of self. These 5 phrases serve as reminders not of what to suppress, but of what to strengthen. They encourage a return to composure, to self-leadership, to emotional maturity that neither clings nor crumbles under uncertainty. A man who holds his center, no matter the outcome, creates a space where attraction can grow, not from desperation, but from shared respect and balance. I hope this message resonated with you and offered something meaningful to reflect on in your own life and relationships. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever said any of these things? How did it impact the dynamic, or perhaps you've experienced the difference when you held your ground? Instead, share your experiences in the comments below. And if you found this helpful, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. There's so much more ahead on becoming the kind of man who inspires connection through strength, not